morning to one and all. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Narayan Rao Kovur. In this video, we will continue to discuss the concepts of national income. National income is the total market value of all final goods and services produced in a country during a given period of time. Usually, one financial year is known as national income. In other words, in general, a country's income is calculated by summing up the aggregate value of all the final goods and services produced in a country during one financial year is also called national income. So, concepts of national income. In previous video, we already discussed nominal GDP and real GDP. So, in this video, we will continue the concepts of national income. So, third one is GDP factor cost. GDP factor cost. GDP factor cost is the value of output produced within a country's domestic limits in a year as received by the factors of production. That means value of goods and services produced within the country. The value of output produced within the country as received by the factors of production, that is called GDP factor cost. So it is the value of output produced within the country's domestic limits in a year as received by the factors of production. The factors of production are land, labor, capital, entrepreneur. Next, how to calculate GDP factor cost? GDP factor cost is equal to GDP market price minus NIT. So NIT means net indirect taxes. That means indirect tax minus subsidies. So GDP factor cost is equal to GDP market price minus net indirect taxes to calculate GDP factor cost. So another formula to calculate GDP factor cost. So GDP factor cost is equal to compensation of employees. Compensation of employees plus operating surplus plus mixed income of the self-employed plus depreciation. This is the formula to calculate GDP factor cost. So, compensation of employees means labor income, wages, salaries, dearness allowance, commission, bonus, employees provident fund, etc. etc. Those are all best example for compensation of employees. Second one is operating surplus. It is also called capital income. Capital income. That is non-labor income. Non-labor income or capital income or operating surplus. Rent, interest, profits, etc. etc. Next, mixed income of the self-employed. So mixed income of the self-employed means self-employed services or subsistence production or small production commodity, particularly in agriculture, trade, transport, particularly in developing countries like India. That is called mixed income of the self-employed. Next, depreciation, consumption of fixed capital. We add all these four, then you will get GDP factor cost. So GDP factor cost is equal to compensation of employees plus operating surplus, that means rent, interest, profit, plus mixed income of the self-employed plus depreciation. Then you will get GDP factor cost. This is one. Next, fourth one is GNP market price. GNP market price, gross national product market price. So GNP market price is the market value of all final economic goods and services produced within the domestic territory of a country by normal residents during an accounting year, including net factor income from abroad. That is called GNP market price. GNP market price. Next. So, regarding GNP market price, it is the total income earned by a permanent domestic citizens or nationals. So GNP is the total income earned by a permanent Indian or domestic citizens or nationals. GNP includes income that our citizens earn abroad and excludes income that foreigners earn here in this country. So income that our citizens earn abroad includes GNP. Income that foreigners earn here, that excludes GNP. Next, GNP. How to calculate GNP market price? GNP market price is equal to GDP market price plus net factor income from abroad. So GDP market price plus net factor income from abroad, then we get GNP market price. So here, GP common, GNP market price, GP common, GDP market price, GP common here. So the difference is, to get nation, so for domestic we add net factor income from abroad. So GNP market price is equal to GDP market price plus net factor income from abroad. So net factor income from abroad is the difference between nation and domestic, or domestic and nation, right? So GNP market price greater than GDP market price, net factor income from abroad is positive. GNP market price less than GDP market price, net factor income from abroad is negative. GNP market price is equal to GDP market price, net factor income from abroad is 0. So this is the fourth one. Next, fifth one is NDP market price. NDP, net domestic market price. Net domestic market price. It is the net amount of goods and services produced in the country in each period. That is called NDP market price. NDP market price is the net amount of goods and services produced in the countries in each period. This is called NDP market price. That means we subtracted depreciation. So here NDP market price is equal to GDP market price minus depreciation. So here DP is common. NDP market price is equal to GDP market price. DP is common. So here what is the difference between gross and net? Gross and net difference is equal to depreciation. So depreciation is the difference between gross and net. Therefore, NDP market price is equal to GDP market price minus depreciation. Depreciation means consumption of fixed capital or user cost, the amount of wear and tear, the cost of repairs and renewals. Next, sixth one, NDP factor cost, net domestic product factor cost. NDP factor cost is the sum of domestic factor incomes net of depreciation. So, sum of domestic factor incomes net of depreciation. That means NDP factor cost is equal to NDP market price minus net indirect taxes. So, net indirect taxes means indirect taxes minus subsidies. So NDP factor cost is equal to NDP market price minus net. There is another formula to calculate NDP factor cost is NDP factor cost is equal to compensation of employees plus operating surplus plus mixed income of the self-employed. Here we are calculating NDP factor cost means, so we do not take into consideration depreciation. That is why NDP factor cost is equal to compensation of employees plus operating surplus plus mixed income of the self-employed. So, what is compensation of employees? Labor income. That is labor income. And operating surplus means non-labor income or capital income. That means rent, interest, profits. Mixed income of the self-employment is self-employed services.